Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to, you know where you are at this point. Welcome back to the canyon. Welcome back to the state of the canyon. It is indeed the state of the canyon for the 20th of January, 2023. This was the previously, I don't know, it could rest somewhere between promised and threatened Q&A episode. I have compiled what I hope is all the questions of the most recent week. I hope for my own personal sanity, compiled them sort of into relevant groups so that questions of similar nature are together. I grabbed a couple rigs to wheel around. I'm sure I'll throw some stills in here in between. We'll try to move the camera rig around a little bit. I just spent 25 minutes doing a sound test, trying to get this to sound at least okay. So without further ado, let's get into it. We'll start with the section that I just called personal. Lead question, James, with a question mark after the name. From this point forward, if you will forgive me, I will just refer to them as James in any question that they've asked. What got you into crawling at an RC? So the RC is a longer one. It goes back a long ways. I got into it because a kid across the street from me, in the house I grew up on the street I grew up on, got a Tamiya Hornet. And I thought that that was the proverbial knees of the bees. So he got one, and then the kid next door was one of those quasi-rich kids, and I think he got like a grasshopper. They're all getting Tamiyas. And then a kid down the street got an RC-10. And I was like, I have to have that. It looks amazing because it looked like something different. You know, that was what lured me in initially. And I couldn't afford it, so I got a Kyosho Ultima. And then the rest is history. And then the kids, there were two kids across the street that built a tiny little track in their backyard. And as a youth, I was always super jealous of it. And they got a Kyosho Optima Mid. It was chain drive, four-wheel drive. And at that time, four-wheel drive was like, what? Like, how rich are you to get this? And I was hooked. I was hooked from there. And it was almost exclusively high-speed stuff with big breaks in the middle. You know, I played with RC cars, I played with my toy cars, and then I got a thing called a driver's license. And then the toy cars fell to the side. And then you fast forward many years, and my oldest son was about, I don't know, five or six. And we got into it again, and then we fell out again, and then we fast forward a couple of years, and I bought my first Traxxas Slash, got back into it again, was in it for a couple of years, about 5 years, fell out again. And then to the second part to that question, here's a long answer to a short question. What got me into crawling? I sometimes, and this is a theme that will recur later, sometimes I forget that I'm old. And I used to be a massive ingester of caffeine. I do love a caffeinated beverage. And I forgot that at my advanced years, there's a certain time of day where it is no longer acceptable for me to ingest caffeine. So I forgot that, and I drank a highly caffeinated beverage, and fast forward, it's about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I am wide awake. I'm wide awake. And I've run out of lives on relevant video games to play on my phone because I'm just laying in bed, and I'm scrolling through Facebook, I think. It was either Facebook or Instagram, and a targeted ad comes up, and it's the Traxxas TRX 4 Defender. And it said, is this something you might be interested in? It was an ad for A-Main. And it said, is this something you might be interested in? And I thought, you know, in this sleep-deprived state, I think it is. So that dovetails perfectly into the next question from JP Wirt. When was the moment you realized RC crawling is going to be my new thing? And it was basically, I took the Traxxas out of the box. And when Traxxas says RTR, I think I had to solder a different connector on the speed control because none of my batteries were, I've long ago moved away from the Traxxas plug. So I brought it out back to where you are here right now, you know, to this stuff here, but none of this was here. This was flat dirt. There had been an RC track here long ago. We will address that later in another relevant question. But I brought the TRX-4 out here, and there was like a little pile of rubble, like what you would see anywhere. And I drove that TRX-4 up that little pile of rubble, and that was it. That was it. I had put off getting a crawler. I remember seeing the TRX-4 when it first came out. It popped up in little ads. We had just tapered out of bashing around with the slashes, and I saw the TRX-4 and thought, what's the fun of going slow? Like, I don't get the allure of this. And I said that from a position of, I've never done it before, so I didn't know what it was like. But the first time I wheeled it, I was like, this might be the thing. So moving along that personal thing, Board Kill asks, well, I'll read out the full question. You know, I've printed them out like an old person. People have already covered a lot of what I've been curious about with their questions, because there have been a lot of questions asked by the time I copied this one down. I do wonder, however, where do you get the energy to make all the videos and do so much wrenching, not to mention the time? I mean, that could turn into an extremely long answer. Where do I get the energy to make the videos? And well, I really enjoy making these. Technical snafus aside, like my problem with equipment, aside from that, I genuinely enjoy making the videos. I try, more often than not, I try to make them at least somewhat visually interesting. I'm constantly thinking about that. Whether that shows in the videos or not, I don't know. Where do I get the energy to do it? I don't have anything resembling an answer to that. I don't know. I just come out here and do it, and it goes, you know, there's that old saying, which is true at best to a degree, where the guy, and I'll paraphrase to the best of my ability, says something along the lines of, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I don't think that's true. I mean, sometimes, no matter what you're doing, it's work. No matter what the job is, no matter how dreamy the job might be, at some point the guy doing that job is thinking, I would rather be sitting on the sofa right now. And that it's no different for me. Segue. RC Recreation asks, do you work in radio? You really should, if not. I do not. I have joked in the past that, if anything, I have a face for radio. And I do have the ability, this isn't even radio voice. This is just making a somewhat conscious effort not to and because I hate ums and uhs. But sometimes the words come into my mouth faster than my brain can generate them, so we get what we get. But if you want radio, I mean, I can do 97.5 super estrella. I can do radio voice. When I took linguistics in college, I had a professor ask me, where are you from? Because I have this kind of ability to pack the car and have it yard. I can sort of mimic, I can sort of parrot other people's accents and dialects and stuff. And I was like, lady, I'm from here. When I answered that question, I was sitting in a chair about 10 miles from the building that I was born in. And as I answered this question now, I'm sitting on a bucket chair about 7 miles from the building I was born in. So I'm a local boy. I've never left. Completely unrelated to that, and I'm genuinely surprised she hasn't walked through the frame at the point. How do you spell your cat's name? JP Word again asks, how do you spell your cat's name? It is not, her name is Gigi. Sometimes we just call her the Gigi. That is not from the Audrey Hepburn vehicle from all those years back. Rex Harrison, I believe, was in that. Gigi, G-I-G-I. She is named after the companion of the titular character Kiki in Hayao Miyazaki's Kiki's Delivery Service. Her cat, voiced by Phil Hartman, was named Gigi, J-I-J-I. So Gigi was named after Gigi the cat from Kiki's Delivery Service. If you've never seen that movie, and if you are unfamiliar as a whole with the works of Hayao Miyazaki, I absolutely, without reservation, recommend them to everyone. Made in 1988, My Neighbor Totoro is one of my favorite movies of all time. And the man makes animation beautifully. And he makes movies, most importantly, they're cartoons. They kind of bridge that line between cartoon and anime. But a common thread in all of his movies is children. They all have children. But the children are not presented as these cloying, obnoxious tropes of children. They're people. And his presentation of children, it's why Totoro is such a beautiful movie. And then on the other hand, you have movies like Princess Mononoke, which is like violent, like so violent, but at the same time so beautiful. So before I go off on an hour-long tangent about the works of Hayao Miyazaki, Lee Jordan asks, how long have you lived in Crawler Canyon? Do you actually live there, or is it just a big yard area? What made you build it all? Just how it came about, really. Well, this is indeed where I live. My house is, I am facing west. So to my east, about 150 feet away is my house. About 12 feet behind me is a fence. And the yard is so large, we lost a little bit to, what do they call that? A little eminent domain stuff. They widened the road. So we lost a little bit of the front yard. And when we lost a little bit of the front yard, we dropped to 0.89 acres. We used to be 1 full acre, and the yard is kind of broken into 3 chunks. It is a narrow, indivisible property. We're only about 110 feet long, but we're about 300 and some odd feet long. So the canyon resides in about the back quarter. This is about 1/4 of an acre, 110-ish feet wide by probably about 75, 80 feet. So we're looking at, I would say, about 9,000 square feet. And at some point in the not too distant past, when we were working on the yard and getting things cleaned up, because when we moved into the property, it was in a much different condition. When we were getting things cleaned out, the wife basically gave me carte blanche, anything west of the back fence. So I was free to do whatever I wanted back here. So it originally started off as a paintball field. We used to play paintball back here. And to anyone that's played paintball before, you might say, 110 feet wide. And also, what you'll notice, this area right here, all the trees, right there, there was a pole in the ground. And then right over about where the trees are by the paintball net, there was another pole in the ground. They were 85 feet apart, give or take. And that was about the size of the speedball field that we would play on. So 85 feet long and about 50-ish feet wide. Because the RC course actually started. I will dig through the old Apple iPhoto, and I'll see if I can find some images where it's the original, the OG off-road RC track with the paintball course butted up against it. They coexisted for a little while. But yeah, this is where I live. This is what I've built. How did it come about? It ebbs and it flows and it moves like a tide. It started off as a paintball course. It became a massive RC course where the driver's stand still exists. It's still right over here. It's been in a ton of videos. And then one day, it goes back to the energy question. It definitely became too much work for just one person. I couldn't take care of it all myself. And an RC course requires an infinite amount more care and attention than a rock crawler course. Like what you see before you, the whole place around me is turning green. But because these are big slabs of concrete stacked on top of each other, the amount of weeds that I get in most of the areas out here is minimal. So this is a lot less work. It's more work to make, but it's a lot less work to clean, maintain, keep up. And if it gets a little overgrown, it's just kind of nice. Next question, Mitsuman5555 asks, related, and I'm just going to read the whole thing again. Well, watching your videos feels like hanging out. I'm curious about you as a person. You're retired, it seems like? Quasi. Let's say quasi. I've been stay-at-home dad since my eldest son was born because my wife is more, I don't want to say business-oriented, but she's better at it. Like, she is much more of a people person. And while I am loquacious to an extreme, at points, I still think if I took that test, I would trend introvert. I do have a massive crawling course in my backyard, which is my excuse to not leave. Because if I don't have to leave, that's awesome. Does anyone in your life think the huge crawler course you're building is weird? My wife does, yeah. She thinks I'm a crazy person. But she thinks I'm a crazy person on a lot of levels, wholly unrelated to the crawler course. This is not a new viewpoint for her. She's thought this for years. Her most popular and common question about the course when she comes out here is, what am I going to do with all of this when you're dead? That's a good indicator of how long you've been married if the humor just trends directly to gallows humor. Any other personal details you'd like to share with the internet? I wear size 14 shoes, and I can kind of squeeze into an XXL glove, but XXXL gloves fit better. They're just really hard to find. I also apparently have what is, according to the fashion industry, a gigantic head, because if I go to a store and pick up a hat that says one size fits all, it does not. James again asks, what are your plans for 2023? My plans for 2023 are to do what I did in 2022. Better? We've got to keep moving. We move and evolve, but we only evolve to a point. To put it into an analogy, I don't want to be AC/DC and make the exact same music for 40 years. But at the same time, I don't want to change so much that I'm unrecognizable as what I started as, if that makes sense. Like, progression is natural, and change is the only constant in the universe. So I expect change, and I expect things to be different. But I also kind of want to keep doing the same stuff. Like, we're going to be crawler-centric around here. I've got some basher stuff, but crawling has really gotten into my blood. We have a very short section of non-RC related. It fills up one page here. I'm going to bust through these real quick. So if any of you don't care about non-crawler related stuff, go make yourself a sandwich. Sofa King Scale RC asks, do you have a favorite bicycle brand or brands? There's only a couple brands I don't like. I don't own Trek, and I don't own Specialized. And that's primarily, that'll kind of dovetail into questions asked in other places, why I don't use things like Proline. Trek and Specialized is the same way. I don't like their business practices. So I don't buy their products because it's unsavory. If you knew anything about the industry side of how Trek and Specialized operate, you wouldn't like them either. They make a fine product, but I don't like the way they lead themselves. So in terms of favorites, I think KHS makes a fantastically underrated bicycle. My most ridden bicycle of all time is on a Ritchie frame. I think Ritchie, even though a lot of it's been outsourced and they're not American made anymore, I still think they make fantastic frames. I've got a Cervelo, which everybody calls the ultimate dentist's bicycle, but it's, in terms of road bikes, it's affordable. It's extremely comfortable. I've done numerous centuries on it, and that's an old R3. I love my R3. Do I call it a seat or a saddle? If you're a cyclist, you are contractually obligated to call it a saddle because you sit around it. There's arguments made on the seat saddle argument all the time, but it is called a saddle. It's a seat post with a saddle on it. Oh. Do I own a Brooks saddle? I do not, because I have long lived by the belief that you don't break in a Brooks saddle breaks you in. And I don't want that. I went the other way. I have a number of Selle Anatomica saddles, the ones with the big cutout in the center. I've got the rubber version. I've got a couple of the different leather versions. My wife rides on the leather version without the cutout, so we have quite a few of the Selle Anatomica saddles. I'm also a big fan of ISM, the split nose ones, which is something that really takes you a little bit of time to get used to. But when I was really cycling obsessive and I was riding every day, it really helped to have one bike set up on a Selle Anatomica, and I could ride that one day, and then the next day I would ride the ISM, because that saddle, you sit on it different. It doesn't sit on the sit bones. It's the ischial tuberosities or whatever. it's on a different part of the undercarriage, so you can ride more because you're moving your impact around. So no Brooks for me. How many gears on your rear cluster? I've got a single speed bike. I've got a 1x11, that's my Ritchie, and my Cervelo is of course 2x11. So I've either got 1 or 11, and I run a big SRAM X drive on the back of mine, so I can get down to a 10 on my 1x11. I love my 1x. Not shifting the front is beautiful. How do I feel about Bluetooth shifters? I mean, my bike's got a bunch of batteries on it already. I run a taillight radar. I have a headlight for when it gets dark. I run a bike computer on every ride, because if you don't record it and put it on Strava, how will anyone know that it happened? I feel about Bluetooth shifters that I think it's a great idea, but they're just too expensive for me. I'm a SRAM guy. I don't have any Shimano left. I use SRAM on my single speed. I use SRAM. Oh no, I'm sorry, I take that back. I've got Shimano Ultegra on my Cervelo. Everything else in my fleet is SRAM. It's the only Shimano I've got left. And on my bike, the brake calipers and the shifters are the only things left that are Shimano. I'm not running Shimano cranks. I don't run Shimano cassettes. So Bluetooth, I would, but when they first came out was the time I was buying my road bike, and it was just horror stories. I'm sure they've gotten worlds better now, but the price point is still absolutely ludicrous. And related to cycling, Green Warrior asks, he mentioned about if I've ever taken selenium for cramps. I have not. And it is something that I will definitely look into, because even though cycling has sort of really taken a backseat to crawling, I still am awakened by getting a calf cramp at least like once a month. They appear to come out of nowhere. It's taken 20 minutes to get through 2 pages, which means this video could go 90 minutes. So rather than stare at that, let's move the camera. No one should take it as an assault or personally of any sort if an answer to one question is more brief than another. I've got to not answer these with my usual length, otherwise this video is going to be 2.5 hours long. We're moving on to the section I call channel related. It fills 1 page. The course related page is longer, but hopefully there's some overlap there. JP Wirt comes in again and asks, what are your favorite RC and non-RC YouTube channels to watch? In full honesty and disclosure, the number of RC channels I watch is really small compared to the rest of my intake. For whatever reason, when it comes to YouTube, I seem to watch stuff about things I don't do at all. So maybe that does make sense. I do a lot of crawling. I make a lot of content about it. So I watch some stuff of interest from Harley Designs, Scale Builders Guild, RC Sparks, but not like religiously. Like I'm not watching the Scale News update every single week. I don't know. I know, and it's not a time thing because I watch a lot of YouTube videos, but I watch channels like, I think Fortnite is one of the most beautifully produced channels on YouTube. Ryan is making stuff of quality on par with like watching Top Gear / the Grand Tour. It's fantastic. And it's motorcycle stuff. I do not now ride a motorcycle. I never intend to ride a motorcycle in the future. I don't trust them. I ride bicycles, but I do not trust motorcycles, so I don't know why. I watch Whiskey Tribe from Texas. What is it? It's like Crowded Barrel Distillery. The channel's hilarious. You watch the people on there and they're like characters. I don't drink alcohol at all of any kind, but I watch that. I watch Grand Thumb because I love the presentation. I like the look of it. I don't own firearms. So I watch things that I'm not involved in, except maybe potentially for one of my longest running channels. I watch Yogscast, Lewis and Simon. They play video games, and it's not even about the playing of the video games. If you're not a video game player, sit down and just watch one of the Yogscast main channel videos where they're playing Trouble in Terrorist Town or Grand Theft Auto 5. It's like a podcast where people are just talking about funny things in their lives, and in the background they're playing video games. So you can see the kind of relationship there. I've often thought that what I do is sort of some amalgam of blog slash podcast, and there happen to be RC cars driving around in the background. The SC4080 in this acts weird. Casual Crawlers asks, would you ever consider collabs with other YouTubers visiting your course? I thought there was a couple other, I might have gotten that in a different section. Would I consider collabs? Absolutely. If anybody wants to make the journey, come on over. You want to film something here? You want me to film something here? Absolutely, come on over. It's a big part of why I built the place. It's just, you know, the phone isn't ringing off the hook, as people of my generation used to say. Would I do live streams or State of the Canyon Live? I would. But the problem with that is I see live streams come up, like there's the announcement that live stream is going to begin. And when the live stream goes live, it's like, at the bottom of the little thing in the bottom of the corner, it says 12 people watching. And honestly, I think that would kill me. I think it would shatter me, and I think my psyche isn't strong enough to withstand it. So I would love to try to do live streaming. I don't know if the equipment I have is really up to it, but I'm definitely not ruling it out. And like I say, I like to try new things. So we're not going to rule it out for 2023. Zero Lock asks, how did your YouTube channel come to be a thing that you do, and what inspired it? I realized at some point, a couple of my most viewed videos are Ecto versus TRX4 Sport, so Daphne versus Yella, and then the one where I did a Defender, which was Ironsides, was in that one, I want to say. What would eventually become the Colonel, and then what would eventually become Yella. The three of those together. I just kind of loosely compared them together, and it was, I thought to myself, I'm going to put my voice on this video, because I'd never done the voice before. I would just grab some song, slap it over the top. And I realized that when I watch content, I don't watch that. I don't like a video where it's just like a rig driving in slow motion and they put music over it. I want to hear what people think. I want to hear informed opinions that will help me make more informed opinions. So I realized I had been making videos that I myself hate. So I started to make those, and when those started to get traction, I was like, so people are interested in the things I have to say? Which generally, because, you know, the only person I talked to in great detail for many years has been my wife. We've been together for some time now. So she's effectively heard everything that I have to say. So I think she just kind of tunes me out. So I'm not used to having people that appear to be interested in the things I want to say. So that was really the inspiration behind it. Casual Callers jumps back in and asks, can you reveal any plans for the channel or projects you'd like to do in 2023? They would also like to be interested in seeing how stock RTRs compare. Have you ever thought about making RTR versus RTR? I have, but the issue with that is, like, what you see before you is a vehicle that I had to borrow. The quick view of the Bushido is up tomorrow, and he didn't drop by yesterday to pick his truck back up, so it's in this video too. I would love to compare RTRs to RTRs, but to me, I really and truly and genuinely live by the philosophy that RTR means ready to replace. Because if I have an RTR, I can't leave well enough alone. To what degree, you might ask? Well, the Bushido that you see before you is not mine. It belongs to the neighbor. I put beadlocks on it. I disliked the look of the plastic ones so much, I donated a pair of beadlocks. Like, that's how it works. Wonderful people like you sitting here watching this channel have been so kind to send me things, and I use those things, and sometimes I pass those things on to others. This is the grand humanhood of the crawler community. I can never thank people enough for the views, for sending me things to test, for sending me things you think I'd like. It's fantastic. And it is it has nothing to do with where the channel came from. I never expected anyone to send me anything ever. Like I've mentioned in the past, my generation, and myself included, I don't ask for help. So asking for questions was tough enough. JJVIZM said they would like to see a rig rundown. Upcoming, for sure. Because I do agree, the last time I did a rig rundown, I think we were like maybe 12. And now, as my buddy pointed out, we're at 22. So yeah, there's definitely a rig rundown, and a lot of the rigs have changed quite a lot since the last time the last one was done. The only part that bums me out about it is that I only got a reasonable, my wife upgraded my computer at the end of last year because I'd been running it on a relatively vintage Mac Mini with like 512 gig internal storage, and the software, the Final Cut Pro that I use to edit these videos, the cache for that software sits at like 1.2 terabytes. So I needed something a little bigger. So all of where this leads is all of that old footage, it's gone. I made the videos, and then everything had to be thrown away to make room for the next video. So I can't throw in footage of, like I was watching a video, Slow Mo Guys, another channel I watch. I was watching Gavin Dan, and they were talking about how they're going to tape drives to archivally store all of the videos that they've recorded. And Gav has everything going back to when the channel began. It's insane. It's like, what's above it? Exabytes. He has data storage in the exabytes, and I never had that because this was never. It wasn't fully planned. I kind of landed in it. Now we're going to jump into the course related. I have a couple pages that I call course related, and I'm going to try to hit these a little quicker. They're a little more related. So that rig's going to sit there for a minute. If you're doing something busy, just put me on in the background and you can listen to the voice. Green Warrior asks, could a tracked vehicle drive well in the canyon? I do not believe that it could, because tracked vehicles genuinely do not do well on rocks. Tracked vehicles are really good at things like mud and snow. Slippery surfaces is what they're good at. These are stickery surfaces. I think if you brought a Traxxas Trax out here, I don't think it would do well. Now, I would love to test that theory. So if anyone out there has intentions of dropping by the canyon and you've got a Trax, bring it over, man. I would love to see how it does. I'm not Fejwe. Fejwe. Let's go with Fejwe. It occurs because I'm going to assume that EJ is Fejwe. Fejwe asks, where do you get all the rocks? What are you hoping for the future of the canyon? I get all the rocks from next door. My neighbor Eddie, that's what he does. He does roll-off containers. They're right over there. Those are 40-yard. Those carry the stuff I'm not interested in. I'm interested in things called demolition boxes. They're about that size. There's one kind of hidden. Did I pan too quick? Right there. See this little guy right here? This guy? He's the same size as the big boy, as the 40-yard, but they're cut down real short, and they're used for things like concrete, pavers. We're in the midst of pulling the 2,000 pavers out of that one to build some walkways. So that's where I get 99%. And as far as rocks goes, it's where I get them all. What am I hoping for the future of the canyon? Bigger, like I want to fill in spots. I want to complete obstacles. There are obstacles that aren't done. Where that Bushido is parked right now in the midst of Leviathan, it is not to a level that I'm happy with yet. I want obstacles to be hard, but not impossible. They need to be difficult and rewarding in that way. And I do have some stuff planned. I need to finish out the slot canyons. I need to finish out Dry Bone Valley. If I actually sat down and put it on a list or put it on a whiteboard, I would probably bring myself to tears. James asks, are you going to hold comps when the course is all complete? I would hold a comp today. If you wanted to show up today and hold a comp, bring your buddies and have a comp. I would absolutely do it. Boardkill asks, do you ever do events with other crawler enthusiasts or friends at the canyon? I have those couple guys that you might have seen in the short that have started showing up, including the guy right here. It's basically him and his buddies, my neighbor and some of his friends. They got into crawling very recently. Those are I'm up to about a dozen people that have actually wheeled here. And anybody that showed up, if they wanted to have a comp format, if they wanted to have me run a comp, if people from a nearby crawler group wanted to come over and have a comp, you're absolutely welcome. Just, give me like 48 hours in advance. Boardkill also asked, do you do comps? I would if I could. Do you ever crawl with the people either at the canyon or elsewhere? Oh, Tibor Beatles asks, do you ever crawl with other people either at the canyon or elsewhere? Here's a fun factoid slipped in here in the middle. I've never driven a rock crawler outside of this yard, ever. Like not even on the sidewalk in front of the house. They are all homebodies I built this because I don't want to have to go out somewhere and risk myself against the elements, the cruel hands of fate. That's the time I snap a rod end or twist an axle housing or something. If it happens here, I'm gesturing behind me. I know how that works. I'm gesturing behind me to where my workshop is, where I can fix anything and everything immediately. JP Word says, I know it was previously a racetrack, but have you owned the property since you bought or built the house? Was it previously a public racetrack? No, it was previously a horse corral. So this area here, the fence that I spoke about earlier, there it is, there's the top of that fence. It just used to be chain link, and I built it up, and then we go over this fence. So right, well, we'll have this guy pointed out, right about here, there was like a 3-bar horse fence with the metal roof over it, the whole thing. And it took up from the fence out to about, oh gee, I don't know if I can get up here to exhibit it. It came out past, oh yeah, there we go. Come on, oh, come on, you little short wheelbase guy. So where the Bushido is, go about another 2 feet to the left, and the horse corrals went past there. Because all of these properties, when they were full acres, were all agricultural. So there were cows and chickens and the whole thing. And when the city incorporated back in 1986, they just rezoned us all residential. So we took the horse fence down and sold it. And some guys came and picked it up with a pickup truck and a trailer. So in terms of, JP Word goes on to further ask, was it a public racetrack? Well, no, it was a racetrack that a bunch of loons built with hand tools and a lot of dirt. So basically what it is now is that the floor of the area, what he's parked on there, is about 2 to 3 inches lower than it used to be, because we would just scrape the top layer of dirt off and make jumps and stuff. And then when we plowed the whole track under, all of it got pushed out to the edges. So the crawler course is built atop the dismantled skeleton of the old racetrack. So was the track there before and you bought it because it was there? No. We bought this because this was my wife's grandparents' house. So we got grandfathered in. It's how we don't have a $3,600 property tax assessment every year, which is great. How did the canyon come to be? I have a thing about alliterative qualities, I guess. Crawler canyon. I like this. I like the duplication of the C sound. If you are indeed asking about the origin of the name, if you're asking about how did the whole thing come to be, it's because I don't know how to stop. Does your wife look at you knowingly when you watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Dreyfus is carving up his yard? Yeah, I told her I had a dream one time that I built a giant, so like right, okay, so right here, so say from the stack of rubble to there, that I built that like giant devil's post pile thing. And then when I woke up one morning, I came outside and there were just people driving on it. And she just looked at me with like absolutely no nonsense and said, that's never going to happen. Casual Caller just continues to ask, do you have such a great, does having such a great crawling complex take away the drive to go out on the trails with your rigs? Well, I kind of answered that one before. I've never left the yard. The nearest that I know of, there's a group out in Fontana, which is about 25 miles away, that they do like a crawling thing. And the idea of driving 25 miles away each way to go drive when I can just do it right here. You understand. I at this age, I understand how hermits work. Don Michael Corbin says, you could spend an entire episode on just your origin story. When I first saw your videos, you were still constructing a lot of the obstacles and courses. That'll never end. Having just gotten into the crawler scene, I was immediately intrigued. I've always wondered though, what drove you to do it? It was such a large undertaking, especially by yourself. There's definitely an element of obsessive to it, for sure. I start and I literally don't know when to stop. And I will place some blame on a buddy of mine that said when the course was still that. So we had not even Undertaker, but we just had this stuff over here with the pond in it. So at that point, the course was just that. And my buddy looked at the yard and he said, you know what would be really cool? You should go all the way around. And once the seed was planted in my head, it goes all the way around now. And now I'm starting to fill out the middle because I can't stop. I don't know how to stop. If I knew how to stop, I probably still wouldn't stop, but I don't know how to stop. I just want to build more obstacles. I want more different things. I want a variety. Continuing on course building, After asks, how would you go about building a really tall rock-faced obstacle, like 8 feet tall? What methods or steps would you take to pull something like that off? All right, there's something you can look at here. I want you to draw your attention here, the top of the as of yet unnamed mountain. And then when we pan across this way, we've got the top of the step, we've got the top of there, you get to the top. You notice, I mean, ignore the parallax, they're all about the same height. Once you get up to about 5 feet, there's this thing about deposition, where when you take dirt and say you just poured dirt out of a big hopper, it would form into a cone. And that cone is gonna have a certain slope to it, like the pile of DG right over here, or the pile of gravel. See the height of that pile of gravel? So for each foot up, you go vertically. The amount of material you require increases exponentially. It's like how a 12-inch pizza is twice as big as a 10-inch pizza, right? Because it's the outside that increases. So the amount of material to get up past 5 feet, this thing right here probably weighs 8 tons, and it's that big. So getting to 8 feet is just, how would I do it? I would hope that you live in a place where you already have some sort of elevation changes. This is old ancient riverbed, so the entire thing is just flat. So we have to start from flat ground. So any elevation you see here is artificially created, and it takes literally tons and tons of material. Coming over the fence to build the course, easily 60 tons, probably more by that time. After goes on to ask, which obstacle in the canyon would be the first to get torn up and put something new in its place? Well, I would say none, because that's not how we work. It's all rubble, so we just go over the top of it. Undertaker over there has been re-topped like 4 times to get to where it is now. That's where Daphne's other line exists, and I think in this amount of time we've gotten to where we want it. Leviathan has been built twice. I would say the section that is going to have the most upcoming changes is here in Savage Lands, because Savage Lands is almost entirely trailing, and I want to get some real crawler options in there. After goes on to ask, have you ever considered bringing other types of rock for the canyon, volcanic rock, slate, etc.? I'll bring in whatever the demo boxes contain. That's why this whole section, which doesn't get focused on a lot because it hasn't been filled in, that's all asphalt. So whenever asphalt goes, it goes into that section. I'll take whatever they give me, but I don't have the opportunity to be choosy about it because I just get whatever comes. Devin Zero Lock says, definitely interested to know the origin story of the canyon. I think I've covered a bit of it. How much time do you spend manually moving all the stone, and do you use machines to move the bigger stones into place? We don't have any machines. We've got one big dumb meat engine. It's sitting here behind the camera. I get some help from people who are kind enough to offer help. Like, look at we're separating out the pavers. Look at the, I get help from folks to do stuff like this, thankfully, because I will just come out here and break my back. And the only secret, and this is not a secret, this is just a method, the only secret to the madness is I try not to do more than about 4 hours a day, like of lifting, because you get past 4 hours and then you're just borrowing time from the next day because you're going to be so sore it's going to be hard to move. And I get there a lot. So machines, I have a trailer for my riding lawnmower that I use to move stuff over great distances, but like getting big rocks in place, or the tunnel that's in Dry Bone Valley, I rolled that in there manually and then used a breaker bar to push it into place, a California bar. It was not fun. Are you going to keep making the course bigger and adding different exhibits? You should add a trailing course. I am, and I already do. If you start over there at the end of Sultan's Curse, you can drive an unbroken trail across all the bridges and through Savage Lands and through Roots Remain and under the trees and through Leviathan and through Backside of Oblivion and through the whole thing. So honestly, I would say in terms of square footage, there's more trailing course than there is crawler course here. But we're working on incorporating the two together a little more cohesively. The mouthful of letters JJVIZM asks 2 questions. Suggestions where to get purchase material for a crawler course, and is it really your neighbor that gives you tons of material to build your course? The answer to the second question is yes. Virtually everything out here is from him. The answer to the first, where to get or purchase material, it's not so much about the locating it as it is about the logistics of it, because it's all very heavy. And if you're moving this here by pickup truckloads, it's going to take some time. Now I realize people aren't going to build a course, generally aren't going to build a course of this scale, right? The amount of stuff that's out here. But if you're building a little thing in your yard, if you go to construction sites and they have piles of concrete debris and rock and stuff, they have to pay to get rid of that. So if you go to those guys, you know, if they're tearing down the 7-Eleven, you can go, hey, can I have some of that? They do not care, because here in California, a load of what's called mixed, like to dispose of that, to take that to the disposal facility, because it was a mixture of stuff. There was pavers in there was sand, there was broken brick, stuff like that. It's $340 just for the tip fee, just to get rid of it. So if you're willing to take their stuff for free, they'll be like, yeah, go ahead and take it. And when trenches are dug and they have to pull rocks out, they are, whatever local legislature tells you what size rock you're allowed to put back in the trench that you dug. So they got to get rid of all those rocks too. Now, a lot of the rock goes to a place like crushers to get made into sand, made into gravel, get reused, but a lot of times it doesn't, and they just end up getting scrapped. Green Warrior asked, model fences or street signs are not planned? Well, I mean, we've got signs out here. There's nothing, I'm pivoting my head around. I have the Crawler Canyon State Park signs that I'm making. I use a Cricut, and I've done a couple videos on making the street signs. And I'm trying to make more, but weeding vinyl gives me anxiety, so they come along slowly. Fairway asked, do you ever do any trailing in addition to crawling? Do you ever drive your trucks outside the canyon? I didn't group these well enough. I'm acknowledging that now. Sure, I do trailing. We've got plenty of trailing here. I guess I just don't exhibit it enough. If you're watching videos back from the raid, you would see a lot more of the trailing portion, because I was trying to connect all those gates together. I do not drive trucks outside the canyon. Maybe at some point. What is your, JP Word asks, what is your favorite or most satisfying line to drive in the canyon? Daphne's Other Line. It's pretty easy. The answer is easy, the line is not, and I think that's why it's my favorite. I don't think I've successfully hit Daphne's Other Line twice in succession successfully. Like when you pull it, you feel good about it. There are other lines that are the same. Some of the slot canyons are that way, but the slot canyons are also infuriating and dangerous. And clearing the L at the Beast is second, but I would say Daphne's on the line, certainly. Oh, do I ever take rigs and go crawl elsewhere? No. To get inspiration for canyon obstacles? I get inspirations from canyon obstacles by seeing things like commercial landscaping, like the stuff in malls or outside malls, or the stuff at Disneyland, the rocks outside like Smuggler's Run in Star Wars Land. I see stuff like that, and I get ideas. There are ideas everywhere, but I can't say that I drive otherwhere to get them. Green Warrior asks, how do outrunner motors cope with the dust in the canyon? So far, so good. I do blow the rigs out with air. I don't generally have to clean water off of them, but I do have to get the dust out of them. So I just blow things down with air after the run, and I try to stick to something resembling a maintenance schedule. Which brings us to just 2 sections remaining, hobby related, which is what I've classified it as. And this one's gonna blow pretty easy, because I'm gonna lead off by just reading down the list of questions that kind of had some good overlap. After said, do you have any interest in mini crawlers or bigger ones like the SCX6? I'm leafing. Board Kill says, have you played around with the smaller scale stuff? Would be fun to see build up with an SCX24, TRX4M, or a UTB 18. T-Board Beatles, what is your opinion on the big swing towards 124th and 118th? There's been a number of questions related to that, and I feel the same way tangentially related between the SES6 and the small scale stuff. With the small scale stuff, I get it. I absolutely get it. If you live someplace where you have genuine seasons, I can see the allure. I can also see the allure in that they're more inexpensive. But I do have some prior experience with small scales. I don't know if it's just due to this, but I don't like them. Working on them is agonizing. So I live by the excuse that I've generated within myself that I call it the ecosystem. I live in a 10th/8th scale ecosystem because there's so much overlap. 8th scale buggies will go on a 10th, quote unquote, 10th scale short course truck, etc. The 24th scale and now the new 18th scales that are coming out have their own entire ecosystems. I don't have any parts, tires, I have no components. I don't even really have the tooling to work on small scale stuff. So I just choose not to. I just don't. I stick with this scale because I don't have a need to drive rigs indoors really. You know, like if I was sequestered to my basement 3 months out of the year because the weather was trying to kill me, I could absolutely understand smaller scale. But I have this, and this is definitely built for 10th scale. So the same thing with the SEX6. The SEX6 is what I consider power creep in the hobby. I don't really see the need to get closer to real. So the SEX6 doesn't appeal to me. It's a 10.3 made gigantic. And I don't. I feel the same way I do about like Losi Baja 5. It's enormous. And when things get big, when they break bigger. So that's the primary reason I stay away from that. Are there, Fayway asks, are there any brands or kits you haven't built yet that you'd like to? Absolutely. I don't own a Cross yet. I would love to build one of the Cross rigs. I don't have a G-Made yet. I would like to build a G-Made. Right when I finally got the notification for A-Main that the sawback Leaf was back in stock, I had just built Old Blue the Leaf Sprung TF2. So I don't know if I'm super motivated. Like I'd like to build a G-Made bomb, but you know, as soon as I see one that I think that I want to build, a company releases another new one. Fairway again asks, what's your desert island pick for servo, motor, speed control tools, transmitter, tires, RTR, and build kit? Let me try to hit those in order. Pick for servo. If I was left to pick only one servo, it would have to be the AG FRC SA75. That's probably my favorite servo. For the motor, it's the Hobby Wing Fusion Pro 2300. So that covers motor and ESC because it is compact, it's full of torque, it's easy to install, it's just wonderful all around. Tools, I'm an MIP man. I would have an MIP driver kit and then a handle to hold them and a drill to drive them. For transmitter, most things need less than 5 channels. My current favorite is the Radiolink RC4GS because I think you get an extreme level of quality and component for 65 bucks. They're fantastic. My favorite radio, perhaps of all time, is the Sanwa Airtronics MT4. It is a brilliant radio, and when you hold it in your hand, you feel like you're holding an expensive watch. It's just beautiful. It has so many menus that they almost get confusing, but the display is great. The trigger feel is second to none. The tension on the wheel is amazing. RTR, I'm not a huge fan of RTRs because they are ready to replace, but I would have to say that I think the one that you can get away with the least replacement is, honestly, it's probably TRX4 Defender. Like, you can do a little cutting on the tires and a little work here and there. I shouldn't have moved into the shade. It's very cold. And it just goes. For a kit, as of today, when I'm recording this, like, I still claim that if you're only going to own one crawler in your life, buy a TRX4 sport kit. But I would say for me, Phoenix slider. You can go anywhere with a Phoenix slider. Fairway goes on to ask, are there any brands or kit you have? Oh no, I'm sorry. Fayway asks, you mentioned your dislike of Proline and Homes. Are there the brands you tend to avoid? One word, Red Cat. Zero Lock asks, do you have any plans to improve the garage spaces for the fleeter crawler or add additional parking spaces? Yes and yes. I'm at 4 garages. I have the original garage. I have the garage above the compressor, the 12 slot. I intend to build another mini box that goes on top of that that's going to hold 3 crawlers, which will get that location up to 15. I just built the crawler section that's above the lathes, that parking structure. That one holds 8. And then we have the OG parking structure that is above the drill press, and that one holds 6. I basically need garage space for roughly 40 vehicles total, because that is the long-term cap. The Wheels of Fate have determined that I am not allowed to have more than 32 rock crawlers. We're at 22, so we are 10 away. Hopefully we won't hit 32 by the end of 2023. We can span it out a little longer, but we will see what happens after that. I do have a finite amount of space. Tibor Beatles, what in your opinion is still a gap in the market in scale crawling, i.e. what new releases do you think will be exciting the next couple of years? I want to see something that at least sounds like innovation, because, like, not to trash something from a company that I like, but Element just announced the Trailwalker Black, and so far as I can tell, it has a different body. They unveiled the Trailwalker Black to replace the Enduro Trailwalker, but it doesn't come with pin seekers. It doesn't have the XF in it. It's got a pre-patinaed body. I understand that is where the market is trending towards, but I want to see new stuff. So what I would like to see is progression and innovation. Things like the Fusion Pro. Show me things like the Fusion Pro. I would also like to see more ready-to-go winch options, because I have a couple and I don't use them, but I feel like I want to get into it. After asks, if you could keep only one crawler, which would it be and why? If I'm only allowed to have one, you can hear her coming. It's this one. Daphne is the rig that she is still ostensibly a TRX4 Sport. She doesn't have the most flex. She doesn't have the most ground clearance. She doesn't have the most anything. She doesn't have dig. She has no fancy stuff. She's got a drone motor converted by literally making a new shaft. She's got the low speed control. Here's the thing. I love an Outrunner. The Fusion, the Hobby, a light bulb went in my head. The Hobbywing Fusion is the Apple version of an Outrunner. Like, it's easy. You plug it in and you go. Getting these Outrunners set up runs the gamut from frustrating to extremely frustrating. I've never had one that just went in and worked. You get a twizzle with the software. She's just, I wouldn't even go so far as to say Daphne is the most capable thing here, but she kind of proves herself to be over time. She's so good. And being built out of a TRX, she's a TRX4 Sport with a 2-speed. Oh, I've really done it now, Grummet. There we go. She is, if not unbreakable, very close. She's one of the original vehicles in the Canyon fleet, and in her entire history, she has broken servo horns. That's it, 2 of them, from like clipping a wheel at speed, because she wasn't always an Outrunner girl, but just amazing. I love the look of it. It was my first patina body. I get compliments on this one. It was the second bumper I ever built. She's got torque for days. She's hooked up to a vintage MX3X. So the radio feels real good. I love Daphne. Opposite spectrum, if you had to get rid of one crawler, which one would it be and why? Much as I hate to say it, it would be Lil Fella, the CMX. It's just so limited in capabilities is what it is. Like he's a trail truck. You can crawl some, but I can find more competent crawling out of the leaf sprung TF2 than I can out of the little CMX. He's just so small. And the other thing with Daphne is, because of her nature of what she is, with that AG Innovations Ninja and that outrunner, like, you got to drive it. It's like, yeah, the Apple Fusion Pro, you got a bunch of driver aids in there. You can control the punch, you can control this, you can control that. There's only one punch control for this vehicle, and it's right here. She needs the good. Like, look how little tension. It's just torque. It's so controllable. I didn't even finish the question from Tibor Beatles. I had an SCX 24, which I ran about twice, and then it sat in a box for 2 years, and then I sold it. Yeah, I can relate to that. My 18th scale that I had back in the day was a RC18 from Associated, and it ate parts is what it did. Like, every cartwheel would break something. So I know crawlers are more durable in that aspect. They're not doing 1,000 miles an hour, but I still kind of feel the same way about it. So no motivation there. We move to the final page, I think. Is this the final page? Yeah, final page. Fabrication. Casual Crawlers asks, is there any way to make a flat rail chassis without shop tools? I have a Dremel and a hacksaw. You could get away with a hand drill and a jigsaw, but you're going to at least need a jigsaw for that. And a bandsaw would be better, which is a shop tool. But jigsaws are pretty inexpensive. Metal cutting blades are pretty inexpensive. The trick is to just go slow and clamp or screw your two chassis rail sides together so that you make the two of them identically. That's the real one. The Dremel will be useful. Hacksaw, I don't use a hacksaw as much as I thought I would. Casual Crawler goes on further to say, would you build a G-Speed with all the bells and whistles just to see how it runs compared to your custom builds? I would. I really would. But it's the same thing about why I don't own stuff by like Rock Pirates. They make a fantastic product, but I fabricate things all the time. So I can make shock towers and chassis and all that stuff like that. So I'm not running out to drop the couple hundred on a G-Speed to compare it against mine, because I build mine for the cost of the aluminum and some time. So I absolutely would, but you can understand that the motivation isn't super high. After asked, do you have a 3D printer? I do. JJVIZMS, suggestions on some tools to make an LCG chassis, so I can expand and illuminate on that a little more. A jigsaw will get you done, or a Blade Runner, Rockwell Blade Runner. Blade Runner could get you almost a whole chassis. You need something with a reciprocating blade that isn't a Sawzall, which will really help. A bandsaw expedites things, but isn't 100% necessary. A drill press, even if it's a very small one, is something I would highly recommend, because repeatability. You'll be able to do the holes a lot easier, and you'll find out that when you're making a flat plate chassis, baby, you gotta make a lot of holes. And then, I don't know how folks drill out things like standoffs, but you can buy either pre-made standoffs, or you can buy aluminum rod that you would just have to thread the center in. You're gonna want to have the taps. You're gonna want to have at least, I would say, a 2.5 tap, a 3 tap, and a 4 tap to do your tapping duties. Hand drill. You know, the list of tools required are not long, but the more tools you have, the easier it is to do it. That's just what it comes down to. JJV goes on further to ask, is it possible to make a motor torque measuring machine similar to a servo jig? I would say yes. I mean, they exist in the 1-1 world, dynamometers. The sticking point would be I have absolutely no idea how that would be done, because I get the feeling there's a lot of math involved in how a dynamometer reads the information that it's given. So I would say, yes, it's possible. No, I don't know how to do it. Then Green Warrior asks, would I manufacture and sell like links? No, there's too many options out there that are going to do it cheaper, and I'm just one man in a shed, so I have to overcome things like shipping costs, and it would cost me like $7.50 to mail out a set of links. And I buy my material in small batches because I tend to be making 1 or 2 sets of links. I can't compete with the economy of scale of other people. You can go on places like Jenny's RC where they're disassembling things and get the entire set of links from like a TRX4 for like a couple bucks. Or you can make them yourself at home for the cost of $10 worth of rod and a 4mm die. You could literally build an entire set of rods, of links for a vehicle for like 15 bucks. And I can't compete with that. And I don't think I'm offering anything special that no one else is offering. I bend my links by hitting them with a hammer. So please don't confuse my apparent unwillingness to sell things to people. I've fabricated parts and sold them to people for many, many years. It's just that I look at RC, like look at the custom towers on the back of Daphne. I don't, there's no motivation in me to make those and sell those, because Rock Pirates RC will sell them to you and they make a fantastic product, and I don't think I can offer you anything that they don't already offer. I tend to, I live by the woodworker's credo, which is, you would go to a woodworker's house, and I do classify myself as a woodworker. I do quite a bit of it. I don't build everything. A woodworker does not build everything. A woodworker builds what he can't buy. So if I want to build myself a bench, the first thing I do is look around and see what I can buy. And if no one offers me what I'm looking for, and it tends to be something very specific, if no one offers what I'm looking for at the price I'm willing to pay, I make it. If I can buy it somewhere cheaper, it would make no sense for me to build it myself, which is why I build shock towers, because the aluminum, the sum total amount of aluminum that is in Daphne's rear shock towers is like legitimately like $1. That's $1 worth of material. So when you buy a Rock Pirates shock tower, you're not paying for the aluminum or the stainless or whatever it was lasered or water jet out of. You're paying for the knowledge, the design, the machines, the logistics, the everything else. You're paying someone else for their time. My time, I genuinely regard as free. So I don't factor into the cost of things that I'm making for myself the time that it took to make them. To get Daphne into the condition that she's in now, I don't know, 30 some hours. I mean, that said, you want me to build a rig for you? With the custom parts and the stuff? Send me the stuff. Send it over. I'll build it for you. We'll do custom whatever. If you have all the parts to go together and you just want a custom flat rail chassis for it and you don't have the ability to build that stuff, talk to me about it. We'll do. Like I say, I don't rule anything out, but if it seems like it's something that's too involved or something that is too much work for the amount of money that I would be comfortable charging someone, or it's something that I just outright can't do, I'm just going to tell you that. I've gotten to the point where I think the most important point you can reach as a builder of things is the knowledge of what you can and can't do. I am not the best at anything. I have my own ways of doing things, and I try to pass on what I think is good information to people, but I'm never going to be like, this is the absolute best, you should get this, unless it's Hobby Wing Fusion, because they're so good. They're so good. So you know what? I think I've run through the questions. I think from here on, if you have a question, hit me up in the comments, HMU, and I will answer them on a case-by-case basis. This was fun, but you know, it felt a little bit like podcasting. I wish I could have made the visuals a little more interesting for people, but I've mentioned in the past and will mention again in the future that I am not the best multitasker in the world. So with that, I've got to put stuff away. I've got to get ready for whatever. I've got videos upcoming. What's tomorrow? What comes up tomorrow? Oh yeah, Bushido test. Bushido RTR quick view. That's mañana. Day after that, another installation of the Fab Lab. I think I'm working towards installations of the Fab Lab on Sundays. We're gonna see how that works. I'm trying to kind of get things to where I'm not making the video 5 minutes before I need to get it edited and uploaded, you know? Try to space it out a little, but I am a one-man band. I do the wheeling, I do the talking. Hey everybody. I do the filming, which is right now pretty steady. I'm trying to do too much at once. There's a bunch of these printouts just scattered all over the place because I'm just tossing them to the side when I finish one page. So, for the closing portion of this, let's move Daphne into a spot where she's going to catch some sun and look pretty for us. There we go. Here's how we'll wrap. Yeah, it's very nice. So here, friends and future friends, here at the end, the close of this weekly update, the Q&A episode, which I may have bitten off more than I could chew in a reasonable and respectable amount of time. Allow me to thank you all for joining me here in the canyon. And I feel that's not radio enough. And I do hope that you join us in the next one, where we do the things that we always do. Probably answer fewer questions and smash around some more. Tune in tomorrow for that Bushido RTR quick view. Tune in the following day to see how we here in the canyon make relatively shoddy crawler links. After that, who knows? I can't plan that far ahead. So if you do have any comments about this one or questions that I might have missed, put them in the comments below. If you liked it, be sure to like it. If you haven't subscribed, I mean, why not? It's free. We do offer channel memberships, so you can become a part of the pretty much daily nonsense that takes place here in the canyon. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. And as we always recommend here at the close of virtually every video produced here in the canyon, in between now and the time we meet again, please, one and all, do your very best to have a good one, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.